Oh, well, anybody
Some,
who's, hi, Mike, if you're still out there in the world, this is what technology does. I've maybe had 6 or 7 of these live streams, and I've the StreamYard that I use, but so I don't know exactly if it was that or what. But so anybody else that's out there joining, we should be having a lot better experience now. And Mike was we're talking about the release of his new book, Believership, the superpower beyond leadership, which I absolutely love. I love when you anything about your brain. You're like you think high level, very strategically. So when you have us start thinking like believership, it's a superpower above that. So let's talk to everybody. I am still hearing feedback from me. I'm not hearing the other funny sound. Let's just see if anybody else is on here. Let's just do that first before we start chatting here.
I'm happy that funny sound is gone because I was concerned about it giving you a headache. That was my biggest concern going in now is you're going to have this awful sound in your ear and it's going to disrupt your day.
So we'll see if someone actually can come in here and be like, I'm here. I hear me a lot, so I don't know if you need to mute your microphone or something. There's something that's happening where I hear myself on your end. And for some reason, I'm not able to connect too well here. So we're going to just go at this, and at some point it'll connect, and I'll be able to see who's actually on there. So, okay, so we're talking about your site, your launch today in New York, and this is exciting. Like we're starting off today. It's a little bit clunky, but that's okay. That's the way life is, right? That's the way leadership is. One of the things that you talk about is this idea of commitment and this idea of choices and how kind of commitment equals lining up a sequence of choices. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that. Tell people who are watching or who will be watching a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that, we've been a century of living under prescriptive authority, right? So in a hierarchical system or a bureaucracy, the superior always knows best, and they will tell you, the commands, and you will follow them, and you will rise through an organization. Your career will be built around adhering to that prescriptive authority in the best fashion and climbing over everybody else and being most proficient at it. And then you will continue to be rewarded with another position or a higher salary, or you'll climb through the ranks, as they call it. And I think that we're living in a very different era now where there's greater information. People have more choices. There's more awareness of opportunities. And there's also a greater awareness of different styles of leaders. And I think it's important, Heather, because this isn't at all something different than the current good works that are out there on servant leadership or authentic leadership, or each person finding the style, the manner that fits them the best, I think is really important. And I also think that the great leaders operate with a myriad of different skills and styles because they need to match them to the people that are on their teams, that they are leading. And I think that's the big change. And that's where I say when we have choice, I think we have choices as we develop ourselves as leaders. We have choices to understand the depth of our self-leadership and how we improve our own growth path. And I think that when people are able to make choices, then they are willingly committing and attaching themselves to the objectives, the mission, the other people. And they'll succeed at a far greater level than that which we could command or orchestrate for them.
This is kind of like the idea of meeting people where they are, and as far as how you communicate, interact with them. Is that kind of what some of this is about?
Absolutely. And just a simple illustration of that is, imagine a group of people with an objective to cross a river. And as they come to the bank of the river, the leadership team, perhaps the executives, would then convene at the riverside and be thinking about, how do we build a bridge? How long will this take? What are the obstacles? What are the risks? And they'll be conjuring up some plan. And the real leader in the group will just jump into the river and start, swimming across with their strength. And they'll say, it's this cold, or it's this deep, or it's this dangerous, and the current is this rapid. And the rest of them will then join in. The ones that are more apprehensive, don't swim as well, are more fearful of that environment, will dip their toe, and they'll be very cautious about entering. And so the idea of meeting them where they are is, where is the bold risk taker? And how can we get them halfway into the river and then start joining hands and make sure that we're addressing every person's needs based on their comfort level and their risk. And the idea is that we can help each other across that river. We don't have to wait for 3 years for a bridge to be built. We don't have to wait for everybody just to, dive in and start swimming, and maybe we'll lose some. It's a greater form of leadership because we do meet people where they are, with their hesitancy, with their reluctance. And we learn, what will it take for them to become brave, for them to feel comfortable, to engage fully, and then help and lift others along the path. So now we're envisioning that there's this human chain crossing the river, and we all help each other, successfully and safely to the other side. That's an illustration that pops into my mind that I believe is available for us if we just allow it to happen.
Can you do me a favor? Turn down your volume on your computer.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
I hear you great. It's just that I hear me great too, unfortunately, from your side. And I want to talk to you. Oh, it's getting a lot better. Thank you.
Is that better?
A lot better. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so this makes me think of something that folks in HR have an issue with, and that is this idea of customizing the employee experience. Because depending on how large the organization is, scaling something like this, and I'm an advocate of this, so I'm just bringing it up because I think we need to be talking about it, because there are challenges that exist if the infrastructure is not in place and they're not curating it properly. That would be hard to scale what you're talking about here, right? This idea of coming to them in the way they need to be approached and dealt with and interacted with and all of those things. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you think would be the best way to scale this believership model?
So I love the question, and I know the challenge, right? Because we're in those conversations, and I hear that. I'm also acutely aware of HR and the industry of HR and the challenges that HR has in large organizations to scale. What I'd like to do, Heather, is flip that a little bit. I think it's hard to control. I don't think it's hard to scale. I actually think it's easier to scale. Here's $1,000 for this year, Mike. You can go create your own learning path, and we're going to allow you to measure yourself along that path. Instead of, they think scaling is everybody has to be the same and it all has to be equal. And I will say, I think that's the greatest failing of HR in my experiences working with corporations. So I think there's a flawed belief that scaling is hard because it has to be the same thing for everybody. I think scaling is easy because it's just a budget. And so stop the proliferation of tools. I don't need more listening channels. I would really like you to use the two attached to your head. I would like more conversation than more surveys. I would like more human interaction than online forums. And so, isn't it amazing how many organizations are spending millions and millions of dollars to implement things that already exist in other forums. We hear it all the time. Mike, it's like Facebook for the corporation. Well, gee, Facebook's already done that. That seems silly.
Yeah,
How much
exactly.
more, how many more logins should I have? How many more screens do I have to interact with? 360 feedback, one of the worst ideas ever implemented. Success factors, right? Now rolled out the 360 thing on SAP, and it's about 10 years after it became vogue and really needs to decline. And I say that, Heather, because I don't think there's any more passive aggressive invite or politicizing relationships more than 360 feedback. You know how it works. We see behind the scenes. Hey, Heather, you did a great job on that. And I would love to point that out. Will you point something out for me? Or, Heather, that person on our team, we're kind of challenged there. Should we both say something about that? So we're like having all these disruptive conversations behind the scene. And the intent was we can capture all this good information.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, I don't believe that. I think it's bad information. I've seen those conversations. I've been in them behind the scenes. So the idea of scaling because it's the same for everybody is actually a false premise. Not everybody's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And scaling it just means providing the equal opportunity for others to chase and develop their own career. Because the prescriptive job path is pretty much non-existent in these.
Yes. Yeah. So what you're saying is, I mean, I obviously, when I'm talking about scaling, I'm really just talking about how do we get this done in a big way across the board, but customized. So it's still for that unique person. And what it sounds like you're saying is this is more of a budgetary focus where they are allowing people to, like you said, here's $1,000 and you can drive your own path, and here's some way to measure this path you're on, and you can see if you're successful in it. So it's kind of a self-driven look at things.
Yeah, and I've taken that in conversations and working with clients to a level that seemed crazy, but then we got into some good discussions. We got into one conversation with a group, and someone in the group had an art history major and loved art. And what we found is they actually were at peace when they were pursuing those hobbies, those interests of theirs. Their feeling of stress was reduced when they were in that activity. My thing is, if I'm in the accounting department, I'm already good at accounting. And so, yes, I need accreditations. We'll do all that stuff. Let's just assume that, please. But if I can find my peace and I can find my center and I can be more mindful if I have this chance to go pursue a great interest of mine and grow as a human being, I truly believe that person will perform better in their accounting role because they're growing their whole being rather than saying, why don't you go to another convention with the accountants, Mike? It will be really fun. You can talk about, auditing healthcare plans or political contributions. It will be, really, really invigorating, life affirming conversations.
I don't know why I'm still getting the feedback, but I'm going to keep going. Sorry for everybody if there's any weird experience for you. I'm going to keep going. So one of the things that, I'm a big believer in definitely having multiple ways to listen, especially above organization and in an aggregated way, aside from, and fundamentally, I absolutely believe that managers need to be meeting with their people, and people should be cross-collaborating with their coworkers, and the executive leadership team needs to be in front of and engaging with the people on the front line. So I absolutely believe that the human experience, the human interaction is absolutely there. And it's important, and it's the most important. And then there's a secondary tier, and that's the reason why organizations do it. And it is because most leaders aren't having the focus. They aren't focusing enough to say, okay, I have 15 direct reports and I've got 20 active projects. And I have like these goals that tie to the strategic initiatives that I have to meet by so-and-so date. And now I have to do what Heather and Mike are telling me to do, which is meeting with each of those direct reports. For me, at least, I'm telling them to meet with them weekly, and not just to talk about projects, not just to talk about process, but to talk about them as people, right? I want to find out what's happening with them in and out of work. I want to get to the bottom of that so I can meet them where they're at. So we can talk about what is the career path you're even looking for? What are the things that interest you outside of the current work you're doing? So, but I and you, we are people that are naturally inclined to do that. Most people are not. A lot of managers are not inclined to be that person who sits with, and we can talk about it to them. We can probably talk about it until our faces turn purple. We hope that there'll be like we can maybe be a little spark for them that makes them think, So in the meantime, since there aren't those leaders, organizational leaders, people above the organization have to say, okay, we know that in order to keep our people and keep them happy and having where they're going to be more investing in the business and innovating for the business, we have to put some stopgaps. We have to put some things in place to make sure that they do the thing they may not naturally want to do. And this is what I'm talking about, is when I'm talking about the scalability, it's like, you as humans, yes, I want all humans to be this way. I want all the leaders to be this way. I want coworkers to be able to collaborate. But in the real world, we know that many men and women aren't naturally inclined that way. So what do we do to almost, I guess it's almost like operationalize the fact that we are going to be operating this way. We are going to be doing this going forward. We can say it in vision. We can say it in mission. We can put it on things. We can say it all day, right? How do we actually get this in place so that, and you're looking at a 10,000 person organization, how are we moving forward with that? I know people are interested, so let's talk about it.
No, I love that. And that's, I go right at that in the book, Heather, because I don't believe that the authority model, the bureaucratic model, I think that's where the challenges arise. I think that until we throw away the containers and the limitations we've placed on that, we don't get out to the, I think of an organization not top and bottom. I think of it more as a web. And certainly there, somebody owns the executive role, the role of decision, the role of responsibility. You have to have leaders. But I also believe that within every group, there are leaders that may not be the authority. And in each of those small pods of people, when they become accountable to each other, and somebody in the group is that good wrangler of feelings and emotions and getting people done, right? It's the friend group. Somebody always picks the restaurant and organizes and sends all the emails out. There's somebody in each pod that does that naturally. I was just at the West Side Market this morning, and I was actually downstairs where they haul things in, and there's people moving in tight spaces with crates and trolleys, and they have this orchestrated dance in a space that really people could not fit. They have their own ingenuity of working it out for themselves. If they had an engineer come in and orchestrate every one of those moments, they would create chaos, not solve the chaos. And I think we have that in our organizations. We don't allow it because you can't influence those around you unless we've given you the authority to do so, unless you actually have that position. We haven't spent the time to build the relationships of respect and allow the natural orchestration of people to take place. We come in a very prescriptive way. And I think that's the flaw in the thinking. And if it was working, Heather, I would say, gosh, let's not touch that. If it works, leave it alone. But all the research, all indications are it's not working. And so to take what's not working and to try to do it better is insanity. And I'm not coming at it with answers. I think you know that. I'm coming at it with an idea of experiences and experiments and the question of what can happen if we change our minds. I think we can do better. How can we do better? Doing better at what's not working, I know, is not the answer.
Interesting. When I think of Zappos, because Zappos decided to go down that road of being having that self-managed type of environment. And I haven't looked at it now in a couple of years. I know I got to tour the place, and I knew someone who was a leader inside that organization, and it wasn't all pretty. So, obviously we hear about Zappos and the culture and all that, and it's all great, but it wasn't so pretty in the beginning. And I don't know if it's gone any smoother, where they say kind of what you're kind of alluding to, where people get to do self-managed teams. And then there's like leaders of a team, but again, they aren't necessarily people who originally had titles. It would mean it's like senior director titles, not necessarily. It just depends on who's kind of the subject matter expert in that particular area. And then other people are just going in and out of that team. While there might be leaders of the team, again, it's not necessarily based upon title. Right. So I'd be interested to go back to them now and see, how well it's going. And there's obviously been other organizations that have attempted to go down that road where there's more of that self-management, self-direction, kind of team outlook, team collaboration focus. And I think, again, in some pockets it does well, and in others it's problematic. Do you think that, I kind of wonder if it's more of a psyche thing? You talked about what happens if we change our mind, and I believe in mindset a lot, and I go in and out of that, in and out of that, in and out of mindset strong. I'm choosing my direction to, oh my gosh, I just lost my mind and I ain't choosing my direction anymore, right? But you do wonder how much of this is a psyche thing. It's so deep rooted in the psyche of the American worker, leaders, people that have titles, that how hard is this going to be to really change? I mean, it's one step at a time, right? It's absolutely one step at a time. This is not some kind of revolution. It's more of an evolution that would happen over time, absolutely. Right?
Yeah, it'll be really hard. I mean, let's illustrate for a second how hard that will be, right? So think of a time frame. Think of a timeline going back 100 years, but let's just take it back to, before I was born, 1954, right? Kind of, we're living in a father knows best world, right? Everybody's in their gray suits and little ties, and right, punch in, punch out, and everything's picket fences and beautiful, wonderful, theoretically. So 1954, Peter Drucker writes his first book on management, which is a brilliant upgrade to the work that was done 50 some years prior to that by Max Weber, who put in the bureaucracy model to orchestrate manufacturing and production environments. So 50 years goes by, we go through the history and a few, world wars, and then Peter Drucker comes along, 1954, and he overlays this really brilliant upgrade to that now 50-some-year-old system, which we're still holding as the standard. We still believe that upgrade 50 years ago on a 50-year-old system is still the best we can do. And it's crazy. So let me give another illustration on that. A year after Peter Drucker's first book, Rosa Parks decided she was not going to give up her seat on the bus, which brought in one of the great leaders of history, Martin Luther King, to start a better conversation of how can we move humanity forward. And although that progress has been slow, Heather, it's far exceeded the progress we've made in our business management philosophy. Now, more than a decade after that, Neil Armstrong takes a little, trolley drop, takes a little walk on the moon and comes back safely. 69. We hold in our hands today 1 million times the computing power than was on the mainframe computers that sent that rocket to the moon let the human beings walk on the moon and come back safely. 1 million times more computing power. And we're still saying we have to adhere to those things from 1954. And the upgrades that we've done in our business models are nowhere near keeping pace with the challenges we're going to face that are going to be more rapid and more significant than the last 10 years.
Yes.
The next 5 years will exceed the past 20 years. And we have artificial intelligence, we have more information. That's a really good thing, but are we preparing people to truly use those tools well? And I would say that to that manager that thinks he doesn't have the time to sit and listen to the employees, skip happy hour. Just have them come into your office for a second. Take that hour and a half of commiseration and misery time and let them tell you what's going on in their lives. It'll be a much, much greater and less expensive investment of time.
It's so true. Who forget the ping pong tables, right? It's let's engage with our people. Like you bring the ping pong tables in after your people trust you. After your people know that you actually love and care for them. That's when you bring the ping pong tables and you have fun with real people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Forget that before that. That is not replacing it. That's not keeping like one soul around. It's so funny how we do have this. We have this. Organizations have these things in their mind that they have to perfect parking spaces and free food. Well, again, all of those things are wonderful once your people know you love them and you care for them and you're going to bat for them. That's the hard part. The hard part is not the ping pong tables. The hard part is getting to the point where people know that you love and care for them. It's hard because you got to do it consistently, right? You got to get in there. You got to get in the trenches. We talk about this idea for humans first. There's this idea of being broken. This brokenness, this part where we aren't perfect. None of us is perfect. We're all works in progress. We're like walking through life together or not. And I think the issue is that we need to be doing it together. And that's how we get to the point where all of a sudden now we can go have some fun. Now we can go to a happy hour and it really means something.
Yeah, I mean, to help each other, right? Like you helped me launch the Humans First Club. We talked about it before it ever became a reality. And on the second event, we were together in Seattle and then together again in Denver. And you've been just a great soul and a great voice in that community. And your willingness to do the extra to help others, is that expression of self and care and compassion and I'll say love for others that feels good. It feels right. And I think people desire that. I think they feel that it's not allowed in some of the environments. And
let's say this. I don't care. I don't like you. Like this is where you and I align real closely. We don't want to hear what's not allowed when it comes to relationships. So we just, right? We don't believe in the guardrail really situation because there are obviously some things you may not want to go too deep on or talk to people about and extensively marriages and funny stuff that can happen inside of there, right? There's a lot of interesting times I had people come to me on that. And I'm like, okay, I have to listen to this, right? It's an interesting thing. But I think in the end, I want to I want to hug my person. I want to say, I want to just be able to talk to them. We're humans. So why do I have to put a barrier between you and I? Just because I have a title, why do I have to do that? I don't have to do that. And I think that's the thing is that it's like, this is what I talk about, the psyche. Just let's say hi to a couple people, by the way, that we know out there. So we've got Shelley Brown saying, we have Shelley Brown saying, find out if they even like ping pong, which I just love because that is so cool. Yeah, who cares?
How mindful is that, Shelley?
Someone's saying not so much. Olga's on here too. Hello there. And she says, congratulations on your book launch as well. So hi, Laquita and Jennifer McGinley and Brian Schulman. So, and I don't know who else is out there. So keep telling me who's out there, guys, who's joining, and keep chiming in and also, telling us what you think. Great. The stuff that we're talking about, chime in on that, but also that prompt I gave you, which is, what does great leadership look like to you? What are some key things that just pop out for you, just like, I feel more whole when I'm with this person and I'm on this team. I feel more whole now. Like Mike's getting to, it's the whole person. It's not just the accountant and the marketing person, but it's, this person who likes to do art and likes to do this. How are we filling that up, and are we investigating? Are we diving deep enough? And I think I agree with Mike wholly that we are not, and we have to do better at it. We have to do better.
I mean, think of the stereotypes that we could put into play, right? So, say accountant and everybody conjures up an image. Say HR and everybody conjures up an image, right? So now we've got the, bookkeepers with the little, green hat, and we have the librarian. So far, we've got those roles covered, and you know what I mean. And that's not real. They're wonderful, loving human beings, and so when they are proficient in their skills to come in and perform well, what happens when we allow them to be fully happy and fulfilled human beings coming in, having an experience that doesn't change their ability to perform with their skills? It actually enhances them because they're in a better frame of mind, that they can have conversations about challenges rather than have to have concerns about hierarchy and how will it look and what will it be perceived as. And we just run these cycles in our heads that if we stop that and start operating more with our hearts, which is real and innate and natural, we can solve a lot of the problems that we're actually causing. Like what I say often, Heather, is it's much more important what we stop doing than what we do next. And especially when we're looking at the priority of humans first. And, sometimes I ask people, tell me about your top 3 priorities. And they say, well, I really have, I'm busy. I have 7, I have 8 priorities. It's like, great. Tell me the first one. Well, these are the top of that pile. And I'm just saying, well, what about the first one? So if you have 8 priorities, you don't have any priorities. If you have 3 things that are the most highly focused, you have to pick a number 1 to do it really well. What is that priority? And I'm saying if we actually look at the human condition, our human experience at work, and set that as the first priority, it will give us a lot of good information of what to let go of at what degree on those lower priorities. It's not that we stop doing surveys. Surveys are good. What do we need to know, and what are they going to be telling us now? So maybe we tweak the importance. Instead of the automated system being first, the automated system's second. So now what does that process look like? And that's really what I believe our opportunity is it's not a big lift and shift. It's not a disruption, words I don't really like. I don't even think it's a transformation until it's over a period of time. It's a bunch of small tweaks, steps along the way that are pointing in the right direction of improvement. And we can take the temperature of people, or we can actually just open our eyes and witness what's happening. And my belief to that, my experience, Heather, says people will cross the finish line to a greater degree, still with breath in their lungs, still with ambition in their eyes, than the way that we're forcing them across the finish line now. I think of how we do, career development, how we do leadership development right now. It would be like sending me to jockey school, right? So Mike's going to ride a horse now. Mike's going to jockey school, right? And the only part they teach me is jump on that animal, and here's how you use the whip. Just start smacking the rear, smack the rear, faster. They didn't teach me how to love and care for the animal. They didn't teach me the relationship that exists with such a big, sensitive being. we missed the good stuff because we think we got too smart. And our smarts is based on something that was more than a lifetime ago. Like, I'm an old person, and the stuff we operate with is older than me. We can do better. We can do
Well,
better.
it's interesting because we've got a lot of conversation going on. And when I asked about the prompt on what does great leadership look like, we've got a lot of good things. By the way, Jane had said, let's see, I'm trying to see. Grant also says hello and congratulations on the book, and she does believe that care is one of the most important things. Larry Boyer's on, and he talked about you connecting with the whole person, recognizing, people spend more time at work than with their families, and we got to be real clear on that, the level of priority. Olga's, care is a must, and it helps with trust. And then Shelley talking about it, leaders empowering others to shine and recognize and cultivate people with their talents. And this is all absolutely. And you kind of wonder, this is what I was saying earlier, is that, we can talk to people that don't naturally care or build trust, maybe till our faces turn purple. And the people that are in this group that are joining on this LinkedIn Live, like, we all can use some tweaks because we're all works in progress. I can, you can. But, how much do they need it? Like, how much do they need it? And so it's like trying to, I've done trainings before, like team communication trainings, right? Where they are sitting around the table and there's people going, that's not me. That doesn't sound like, that's not my behavior. And then at the end, they're like, oh gosh, that is me. And I'm awful. Like, they'll come to this realization. And then it's like, I feel like there's some impact, but overarchingly, I'm going, is anybody in there that really needs to hear this? Like the 24 or 5 people that are on there right now, are we all the same people? Like, are we all, like this, you see where I'm going with this? Are we all this humans first? It's like this idea of a people first and caring. And when do we start to impact people outside of our circle? And we can do that just by, I believe, leading by example, being who we are and showing people by example, the right way to do it. But I have seen some leaders who, they don't want to hear Heather. They don't want to be impacted by me. They don't want to be open to the messages that I might be putting out there because they don't feel, number one, that they need it. Number two, they don't know if it's necessary. Right. So this is kind of this thing that we're up against. We're up against this with humans first. We're up against just with what we do. And some of these people that are on here, Amy Blaschka, hello there. Shelley, mindfulness, all of us, right? And I'm sure all of us, we're sitting in there doing group meetings and we see those people going, like that, their arms are folded, right? They're not into it, and we're never going to change them. How would you think that we should go about trying to change those people who aren't really that way?
It's hard, right? So I've been told that the way I operated with my teams was not desirable. It didn't look like the rest of leadership, and I had to leave the company. I had to walk away. I say very truthfully, I try to say it jokingly, but it's the truth, is I went through 5 mergers and acquisitions, Heather, because I didn't stay around for number 1, 2, or 3 or 4. Because at some point, doing those transitions, it's a unique skill. And I did it by engaging people and understanding, what we needed to do, and they succeeded. But in the end, when it goes back into normal state of business, I was kind of always told that's not the way we do it. That's not the way we look. And so I was told to be somebody different than myself. And I think we do that often to leaders, especially as they're rising through their careers, is, what part of yourself are you willing to sacrifice to become more like the model we have in place? And that's the opportunity, I believe, greater than any other thing, is if we want better leaders, perhaps we should start promoting the better people. Not those most likely, those that came before. And what does that do for us in the long run? It doesn't take a lot of imagination, Heather, to say we may have solved the diversity and inclusion problem by not orchestrating the same patterns as before and allowing the better people to rise that have the skills. But maybe the greater skill is those that can pull people together, to move teams of people along, to influence in their sphere. and actually have the heart to be present, mindful of the messaging, of expressing the mission and the goals and the purpose of the company, and others will follow them instead of the authority figure that says this is the deal, and get on the bus, and if you're not following, you're out. And so who's the first to go out? Those that don't capitulate or look most like that current leader. We miss a great opportunity. Yeah. So if we want better leaders, let's start promoting better people.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I was on a podcast the other day. We were talking about this, and it really, the hiring and the promotion practices and some of the stuff I see in employee engagement comments, the lack of fairness, the favoritism and just strangeness that goes on in the promotion practices it's scary actually. And I can see why people have a lack of trust and don't want to speak up. And while voice is so important, people don't do it because they have that lack of trust. And so for people who are joining, maybe they're just joining, they've been on a while. I'm talking to Mike Vacanti right now. So this is the guy. This is the guy who just came out with his book, Believership, The Superpower Beyond Leadership. And this is the launch day. So you can go get it on Amazon, and I have it scrolling at the bottom here, that Amazon link. So I'm super excited to have him here. And he's in New York right now, going to be doing a launch party there with Claude Silver and 60 or 70 other people. I'm jealous that I can't be there, but I know it's going to be fun. So take tons of pictures and make sure you post them. And here's the thing about Mike and I, because he had one of the very first conversations with me before we started Humans First. And he and I, we can talk for a long time because we are ideators. We're both ideators. And so you could pretty much never get us off here. We'd be here literally till 2:00 going. And then when the leader does this thing, this is what happens. So I mean, all of the people here. So I was just having this. Olga says, I was just having this conversation today. How do I even begin to convince someone that an organization must have a purpose? You gotta love that. Elizabeth says, this is a struggle we have in my somewhat small town, which is why I've been drawn to become a consultant, hoping the local business leaders will open their eyes and their minds. It's interesting what just came to me as I'm talking to Mike and as I'm reading your comments. And I know there are people who specialize this, and I don't do a specialization in this, but I can see why they would, which is specializing in the folks that are not yet managers of people. So they are what they call those high potentials. I can't stand the word because I feel like we all have potential, but I see what's going on here. And if we focus on them, we're not trying to then fix the people who've been doing this for 20 years. Because my message is to all leaders, but I may only be impacting those people that are right at the beginning of their career, like on my Leadership with Heart podcast or in this conversation. And so it's something to start, when we talked about this, even in our group, our Humans First group, do we start to really be focusing on those very new supervisors? And that's where we have the biggest impact. Olga and Shelley and everybody that's on here that does this work in this human space to really make an impact. What do you think?
I think you're on to something that can be implemented. I think it's brilliant. We can see the people that will have the desire or the capacity to go in that direction. Let them self-select a little bit. And it can start right at onboarding. Can you imagine coming in and saying, hey, welcome to the company. We have balloons and there's banners and really cool tchotchkes on your desk and your computer set up. And it's I'm feeling great. And at 3:00, you have your first leadership training. Because we know what we are as a company. We know what our vision and mission is. And we're going to start to let you taste that and have conversations and understand how that works. It's part of your employee experience. Because you joined us, you have the potential to be a leader. Instead of what we're going to do is, everything 6 months is a probation period. We're going to all be sitting here, like you're in a diving competition and we're over there holding up 6s and 8s and whatever. And we'll get back to you and tell you how you're doing. It's all right. Can I still enjoy the balloons? It's yeah, just for today, right? It's what are we doing? What are we doing?
I love it. Well, what I like about this, this conversation, which we probably are going to have to take on to yet another conversation on another live, because this, like I said, Mike and I can do this. We can go we can go off track and on track, and it's all so interesting and fascinating. Like you guys could sit here and just be like, wow, because it just goes like into all these ideas, right? But what I like about this idea of starting from just everybody coming in is it's leadership for all, right? It's not this select club of people who look and act a certain way. That's what I like about it, is that it's for all. And so it brings this idea of inclusion to a whole nother level.
It does.
It's not just
And
people with
Heather,
titles.
think of, who gets promoted, right? So you and I, we jump in, we're eager with the job, we have some skills and capacity, and we start performing well. And now they say, you know what, Mike, Heather, we would like you to now manage that team. We're going to promote you. And here's, whatever that means. Here's more money. You're on the fast track to climb in the career. And we're thinking to ourselves, gosh, I like what I'm like. I like performing. I like doing what I'm doing. Adult daycare doesn't sound like fun to me. Right? It's like, well, if you want to last in the company, you have to take on that responsibility and do these things. And I think I would rather have the person that's self-identified that I like the nurturing and growing and listening and communicating. And while I may not have the greatest sales skills or the other skills, please teach me those. I'll improve on them. But let's hire the person that has the capacity to care and lead and influence others. You want to change the employee experience, change the employee experience. Like, change the whole experience. It's not rocket science, but it will take a lot of tweaks. And you know me, Heather, like, the purpose of this book is really to start the conversation. I don't pretend. Like, there's no way I could have all the answers. I just have a bunch of experiences that gave me ideas to share. And that's why it's called Volume 1, is here's my experience. Here's my wacky path to get to this point. And here are the things I experienced and now what I've come to believe through that time. And then it finishes with, chapter 8, lift others. That's my intent. And the Humans First Club is part of that. What am I doing myself instead of pontificating? Am I getting up and doing something in the morning? And that's the invite here is, Volume 2 will be the discovery. So all of us that have ideas, whether this is touchy-feely BS, which I've been told before it is. And so if somebody has that opinion, they're invited to have a contribution in the next book. Let's have an open discovery discussion about it. It's not about everybody agreeing. It's about what are those challenges? What are those different viewpoints? And let's learn together. Let's try this on. Let's try to do something different, because we're not solving the problem, continuing down the path we're on. So people can do better.
Sorry guys for the little bit of the sound you're hearing in there, but I would rather be touchy-feely than hard and fast and whatever else around that. I'm proud to be a part of on your team here. And for those, again, that are joining late or whatever, just remember to go purchase the Believership, the Superpower Beyond Leadership. And this is his launch day. So it'll be super, super exciting to get a lot of people to go in and buy and get stuff for Christmas gifts. So go do that. Go do that now when you get off this live. And what I'm going to do, Mike and I are going to join back up probably next week after he's had that launch week. And I'm probably going to bring on a couple other surprise guests. So there'll be probably 4 or 5 of us on there, and we're going to do another wrap session on this topic. We're going to keep going into this idea of leadership for all and kind of what that looks like, and talking a little bit more about Mike's book as well. So for everybody's there, thank you for joining. I told you we can go on, and we will. We'll just kind of keep meeting every week if we want, and that's we can do it. So thanks for joining and all the comments, and we really appreciate everybody being on here. This is going to be something that will be housed, so if you want to go back and watch it later, it's housed in LinkedIn, and I'll share it as well, so you can see that. And stay tuned for my notification for next week, and that, like I said, there'll be some surprise guests joining Mike and I And you know what, Mike? Have fun in New York on your launch day. I'm so excited. Take pictures, please, and post them. Let us know.
Thank you. I will do that, and I really appreciate this getting on, and how cool that you brought up next week. You know, we're all hearing that for the very first time right now.
We are.
That was a surprise to me.
That's how Mike and I roll. That's what we do. We just do it. It's ideation, and it comes from the heart. So just as long as you know it's coming from the right place. So yes, Mike,
Heather,
we're doing that.
If you invite me to any conversation, I'm there. I am
Yeah.
just a huge fan. Love the work, and you have been a great friend, a great well of wisdom for me, and a guide. And I adore the work you do and our relationship. So thank you for that.
Love you. Have fun.
Thanks.
See you guys next week.